this time, I'd like to call the Certificate of Appropriateness meeting to order. At this time, I will turn it over to staff for the roll call.
Thank you. Vershay Height.
Here.
Sandy Feaster is excused. Curtis Casefang.
Here.
Janine McAuliffe.
Here.
John Reese.
I'm here.
Oh, there. Heard you that time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody to the October 28th meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission's Certificate of Appropriateness Committee. My name is Vershay Height, and the time is 5:01, so just a minute after the hour. Let's see. I'm sorry, and you'll have to forgive me. My notes are all as if we were in person. So Tanya, please feel free, and Francis, please feel free to jump in if there's anything that I'm supposed to add with regard to the virtual format. But I know we have our list of attendees and speakers signed up, so we'll hear from them later today.
Vershay,
Yes.
Before you start, someone's gonna send you, there's a whole long thing that you need to read
Okay.
for the virtual meeting. So if you hold on just a moment, we'll forward that to you.
Okay.
Vershay, can you hear me?
I can.
I just thought during the time you're waiting for the sheet to arrive to you, I thought I'd introduce myself because I was incorrectly introduced by the host as a commissioner, and I obviously would like to correct that. But it might be a good time to just have everyone introduce themselves during this silent period. And I'll start if you like. I'm Francis Raspberry, and I'm legal counsel to the committee.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you for starting. And also, I'm Vershay Height, an architect in the Raleigh area, also serving as chair of the COA. Curtis?
Curtis Casefang. I'm a theater consultant. I live in Oakwood. Commissioner.
Thank you. Janine?
Thanks. Janine McAuliffe, live and work in Raleigh, residential designer.
And John?
Hi, I'm John Reese. I am an architect and I live in the Glenwood, Brooklyn neighborhood.
Fantastic. Thank you all. All right, and my notes just came through. Thank you again, Francis, for that suggestion.
So it was sent. Hopefully you'll get it soon.
Bye. Okay, thank you. All right, this is quite a bit to read, so here we go. All right. Okay, let's see. I would like to start by acknowledging that we are conducting this meeting using a remote electronic platform. I would ask for your patience today, as you've continued to show, as far as right now goes, as we proceed. There may be slight delays as we transition between speakers, participants, and presentations. The Certificate of Appropriateness Committee is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes and the city's Unified Development Ordinance. We conduct evidentiary hearings on applications for certificates of appropriateness. Before we begin the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda, I would like to provide some important information about the steps taken to ensure that each party's due process rights are protected as we proceed in this remote platform. First, Today's meeting will be conducted in accordance with the newly enacted statutes in the Session Law 2020-3, which allow for remote meetings and quasi-judicial hearings during declarations of emergency. Second, each applicant on today's agenda was notified before being placed on the agenda that this meeting would be conducted using a remote electronic platform. Every applicant on today's agenda has consented to the committee conducting the evidentiary hearing on their request using this remote platform. We will also confirm today at the start of each evidentiary hearing that the participants in the evidentiary hearing consent to the matter proceeding in this remote platform. If there is any objection to a matter proceeding in this remote platform, the case will be continued. Third, notice of this meeting was provided to the applicants and the public in numerous ways, well beyond the legal requirements for noticing this meeting and the evidentiary hearings. Specifically, notice of today's evidentiary hearings was provided by mail to all property owners within 100 feet of each subject property. Each notice letter notified the recipient of the remote meeting platform. The letters also stated to contact the city immediately if there were any objections to the evidentiary hearing for which the notice was sent, or to the remote meeting platform. No case is proceeding today in which the city has been contacted by an applicant, participant, or other individual with an objection to the case or to the matter being heard in the remote meeting platform. Notice was also provided by posting notice on the site of each property, publishing notice in the newspaper, and providing notice on the city's website. The notices for today's meeting contained information about the means by which the public can access and view the remote meeting as the meeting occurs. Fourth, any individual wishing to participate in today's evidentiary hearings was required to sign up prior to the meeting to participate. Information about this sign-up requirement, along with information about how to sign up and participate, was included in the mailed notice letters sent to each property owner within 100 feet of each subject property. This information also included on the RHDC city website, and among other information, a link to the website was included in all methods of notice. All individuals participating in today's evidentiary hearings were also required to submit a copy of any presentation, document, exhibit, or other material that they wish to submit at the evidentiary hearing prior to today's meeting. All materials that the city received from the participants in today's cases, as well as a copy of the staff reports and staff presentations, were posted online in board docs prior to this meeting. All materials that will be discussed today can be viewed at any time during today's meeting by visiting raleighnc.gov/agendas and selecting RHDC Certificate of Appropriateness Committee. Finally, all individuals who signed up to participate in an evidentiary hearing on today's agenda, as well as all city staff participants, were emailed a witness oath form prior to today's meeting. Any individual planning to testify or submit evidence in an evidentiary hearing was notified that they must sign and return the oath from the oath form prior to today's meeting. We will also reaffirm everyone's oath on the record at today's meeting. Okay. All right, with that, I'm switching back and forth. Okay, with that, we will move on to the minutes from our last COA meeting. Do I have a motion to waive the reading of the minutes? Have all of the commissioners had time to review those in advance of today's meeting? Okay, great. All right. And is there any comment or discussion on those minutes?
Nope.
No? Okay.
And I'll move to waive the reading of the minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right. And that is approved. Okay. And Tanya, could you let me know how many minor work orders or minor work applications were processed by staff this month?
We can tell you, but before that, the motion was to waive the reading. I didn't hear that the motion was to approve the minutes.
Sorry, I
I may have misheard.
No, we didn't do it. You're right. So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that's unanimous for the approval of the minutes. Thank you, Tanya.
And there were 11 minor works approved.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for your work on that. All right. Okay, I believe with that, we are now ready to hear applications. And according to my notes and agenda, we do not have any summary proceedings this time. Is that correct?
That's what I said.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So let's move on to the evidentiary hearings. And I have a motion to approve the final agenda for this meeting.
Well, let me just make a suggestion, if we could. And please, staff and Mr. Raspberry, let me know if this is appropriate or not. There was an announcement that the commission made a decision in our last hearing on barring two-story garages in the Oakwood neighborhood, and it was made in the Oakwood newsletter. And that announcement was incorrect. Would this be a time to just place the correction into record? Or is that best done after the cases? Or not at all?
I have a question. Curtis, is what you read in the newsletter or is it in the minutes?
It was in the newsletter. It wasn't in the minutes. There was no such decision ever made.
Okay, now I understand. Okay. And your suggestion is what now?
Just that we corrected that we never made a decision.
Yeah,
correct the record for them, for the world, that we never made such a decision, and
agreed.
that's just not how we work.
Okay, I agreed. Thank you. I appreciate that immensely, and thank you for being on top of that, because we definitely don't want misinformation going out there. We have enough of that in the world.
Curtis, if you like, I'll weigh in on the timing of raising that. I think now is a perfectly appropriate time to raise it. I mean, you're in the sort of old business section of your agenda prior to the evidentiary hearing being opened.
Okay.
And since it arises in the context of the minutes you've just approved, even though it's not in the minutes, it's sort of a mischaracterization, perhaps.
Yes.
Something that might have not been said at the last meeting, but I think it's perfectly appropriate for you just to put that on the record, just as a matter of general old business of the committee.
So may I suggest 8.5 that we do I don't know what even to call this, an announcement of an incorrect reporting of a decision onto the agenda. I guess that's my proposed motion. I see a second.
Yeah, that's my second.
So do we have to prove the minutes before I open my mouth here?
Well, I think the motion to approve the minutes, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that was made and carried. And so this is just simply a general information announcement.
Okay, so general information. I'll hop on in. It was in the Oakwood newsletter that was announced that two-story garages would no longer be approved in Oakwood. And if one reviews the minutes that were just approved, that there really was no such decision. Each application we review in context of the guidelines and the content of the application and any evidence that's presented. There are historic two-story accessory buildings in the Oakwood Historic District. And there, if someone is proposed, it will be reviewed and decided upon based on the specifics of that case. So that's what the world should know.
Here, here.
Cool. Thank you.
Does any further action need to be taken on that, Francis, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right, with that, now we are ready to open the evidentiary hearing portion of this meeting. Okay. Let's see. All right. So evidentiary hearings are conducted in a quasi-judicial format. During the hearing, we receive evidence to determine that the proposed changes are not incongruous with the special character of the historic district or the historic property. We review this evidence in light of the design guidelines referenced in the city ordinance. Each application is heard in the same way. The quasi format of the hearing requires that we be impartial. The written staff reports are evidence presented, just as any other evidence and were made available to us, the applicants, and the public at the same time. If any of us have any reason to discuss the specific details of an application before today, we will ask to be excused from hearing that application. There is no time limit on testimony, but repetition is discouraged. Okay. I'm reading through some of those. Okay, sorry, one quick second. Tanya, I'm just gonna be honest, I prepared based on the in-person minutes and not the virtual ones. So I have the notes that you gave me. There's a lot more verbiage here. Do I just need to read through all of this? It seems a little redundant.
I'm going to have Colette chime in on that.
One second, and I'll look at what I sent you. I
Sorry, it's been
covered most things.
Okay.
As I recall, just the important thing when you do the affirmations is also verify it's affirming them, but also again having them agree that they've consented to the remote meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I guess before we get into our first hearing, I have a note for staff affirmation and Raz. Would you mind calling each staff member by name and doing their affirmations?
Actually, I think you as chair have authority to administer oaths, but I don't.
Okay.
So you'll probably need to just, if you've got that on the sheet before you.
This is where it's confusing. This one says that you're supposed to do it, but the in-person one says that I do it. So, okay, I have no problem doing that though. Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the first application. By the way, are we discussing our old applications today? Item B, 605 North Bloodworth Street at all?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and go with the affirmations for COA-0114-2021, 605 North Bloodworth Street. And I have that 3 speakers listed for that. If you could go ahead and have them unmuted so that we can do the affirmation.
The speakers are unmuted.
Great. And then could you all state your name and address for the record?
Why don't you call on them one at a time so they know who to speak?
All right. All right, Lena Siebert. Lena Siebert. I'm sorry, Miss Siebert, we're having trouble hearing you. Sorry, we still cannot hear you.
Hello.
We got you.
I barely hear you.
Okay, Dina Sabert and 206 East Franklin Street.
Okay, we can barely hear you. You're slightly illegible. And maybe we can give John a try. Are you all on the same line?
Yes, they're on the same line.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we are having trouble hearing both of them.
I'm Sabert at 206 East Franklin Street.
Still having trouble hearing both of them. Maybe we can jump to Douglas Jones, and then we'll circle back.
Hi there, Douglas Jones, 702 North Glover Street.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jones. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Okay. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
I do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. It's John Seibert at 206 East Franklin Street, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Great, thank you, Mr. Seibert. And is Linda with you as well?
Lena, yeah.
Lena, okay, great.
Lena Seibert, 206 East Franklin Street.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Great. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
We do. Or I do. Yep.
Great. And then before we hear from the first speaker in this case, let me ask if the committee's attorney has any preliminary remarks or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. and Ms. Seibert, I'm not sure who intends to be the initial speaker in this case, but the North Carolina State Bar, I am counsel to the committee in case you were not online for my introductions, but the State Bar has issued a formal ethics opinion that representing a party in a quasi-judicial proceeding, such as the COA hearings, may constitute unauthorized practice of law, which could be a criminal offense. In this case, representing a party consists of making arguments, summarizing a case or one's contentions in a case, examining witnesses, or other practices that attorneys engage in generally in representing clients in legal proceedings. The practice of the committee to address this has been to ask if any of the witnesses that are appearing, and they're not individual owners of the property speaking on their own behalf, if you would acknowledge for the record and agree for the record that you are you're appearing in this case as a fact witness only, and to answer questions, and that you will refrain from summarizing a case, making arguments, questioning witnesses, advocating a particular position, or otherwise doing the sorts of things that are defined as a practice of law under the bar rules. Would you just acknowledge and agree to that for the record?
I do.
I do.
Thank you so much.
Vershay, Tanya here. Staff needs to be affirmed as well.
Yes. Okay, and
And-
yes,
I was going to say, unless Mr. Raspberry disagrees, I think you can just affirm all three of us to cover all of the hearings. Is that acceptable?
I think that would be fine. Perhaps just a note for the record as each case begins, if a staff member is going to testify or is going to make statements, just to put for the record that they understand they're still under oath.
okay, great. So that said, staff, all presenting staff today, could you state your names and addresses for the record, please?
Rashay, this is Erin. Would you mind calling us by name as well?
Sure. No problem. Okay, Tanya Tully.
Tanya Tully, work address is 1 Exchange Plaza, Senior Historic Preservation Planner.
Thank you. And
How about Aaron Morton go next?
I was going to go ahead and swear you in, but we can
Okay.
do it all in a batch. That's fine. Aaron?
Erin Morton, 1 Exchange Plaza, Raleigh, Preservation Planner.
Great, thank you. And Colette Kane?
This is Colette Canane. I also work at 1 Exchange Plaza and I am a preservation planner as well.
Okay, thank you all. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give and the testimony that you will give throughout the evening in these matters is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Tanya Tully, I do.
Erin Morton, I do.
Colette Canane, I do.
Great, thank you. Okay, I believe with that we can go ahead to the staff presentation.
All right, this is case 114-2021 for 605 North Bloodworth Street in the Oakwood Historic District. The work request is to remove the accessory building, construct a new 2-car garage, construct patio walls and gates, alter driveway, and construct retaining wall. Next. This is a view of 605 North Bloodworth Street from North Bloodworth Street, and this is a corner property, so we'll work our way around the side of the property. Next. This is a view from the corner of, I believe it's Pace and Bloodworth. Next. I guessed right. So a view walking up Pace Street, you can see the accessory structure and existing patio walls. Next. And a view from across Pace Street directly to the accessory structure and rear yard, as well as the adjacent driveway, shared driveway. Next. And another view from Pace Street. Next. And the accessory structure currently requesting to be removed. Next. And the driveway. Next. So staff suggestion is that the committee discuss the massing and scale of the proposed garage with regard to the subject property and to well-related nearby buildings and to defer to allow for revisions based on the discussion. Should the committee choose to render a decision, staff suggests that the committee approve with conditions. Next. And there was some new information provided on the case. This was from the adjacent neighbor regarding a potential project to relocate the existing garage. And Mr. Raspberry, if you have additional comments to share.
Madam Chair, my comment to staff about the additional materials that were submitted, is that if the issue obviously before you is the demolition, proposed demolition of the shed, which is a significant structure, historically significant structure. I understand that the additional information relates to a possible proposal for removing and relocating the shed to a different nearby site. And the new information gets into the details of the possible relocation of the property, of the shed rather, on this other address, at this other address. My suggestion is that if you choose to receive it into evidence, it be for the limited purpose of indicating that there may very well be options for the demolition of this property, which one would think would support imposition of the delay, because the delay is intended to provide a time period for exploring options. And here you have an option that's presented to you. But the particulars of that new information, and as it relates to a different property and perhaps relocating the shed to a different property, shouldn't be considered for that purpose, because I think that would require a separate, I think staff is in agreement, that requires a separate COA for the relocation part of the removal and relocation of the shed. So that's my thought. If you find it worth admitting into evidence, it should be for just that limited purpose, that it shows that options are being considered.
Okay, thank you for that, Francis. I think that's helpful. Yes, John?
Forgive me for being so obtuse. So if we hear the case, are we still discussing its demolition and then approving the demolition for a year or something so that this other option scenario can be played out? Or is it a scenario where I guess, what are our options if we proceed with this, I guess is my question.
Mr. Reese, if you'd like me to respond to that, the issue before you, as I understand it, is the demolition of the shed. That's what's being proposed in the application. And as you all know, you have no authority to prevent the demolition. You have the discretion to delay a demolition for up to 365 days. So that is really the only action that's the only decision you have to make is, do you impose a delay or not? And one would think that this other evidence would support having a delay period. But again, it relates, the relocation relates to a different property. And I think it's clear that the details of that have to be pursued in a new application for relocation.
Gotcha. I understand now. Thank you.
Janine?
I just want to understand who brought this forth to us. Was it the applicant or was it a neighbor? Like, does the applicant know about this? Or is this a third-party interest? I'm just trying to understand.
Janine, this is Erin. The applicants brought this forward via email as a potential solution, just to begin discussions. And the neighbor is here tonight as well with the applicants to speak.
Okay, thank you for that.
So I would say at this time, I think it's appropriate to allow our applicants to speak. I'm not sure who wants to start on their side.
I can speak. This is John Seibert.
Okay.
So just to address the issue of the existing structure, a neighbor and our client were having a conversation, Mr. Jones, who is here tonight, and it came up that he would potentially be interested in this structure, and so we offered that as a potential solution. I don't know if it's possible to have a timeline that might be tied to an approval of the COA related to relocation of the structure. So in other words, instead of waiting the full 365 days, could we basically wait until a COA is approved in order to have both of the permits approved simultaneously? Anyway, something to consider. So first of all, just going back to the design and talking about the design that we presented. So we've lowered the overall structure from 10 feet to 9 foot on the first floor. We relocated the staircase away from the Page Street Bloodworth location it previously been located and brought it into the courtyard. And then we changed the pitch. We removed the decorative decorative bracket. And we basically replaced the iron gate to wood per discussions with owner and staff. I think that's the crutch of it. Yeah. So we've made an effort to really reduce the overall mass of the house. And we also, if you look at sheet 9, it shows put a diagram together showing the I'm sorry, it's in the beginning. Oh, okay, on 009, kind of showing our structure relative to the other garage structure that is along Page Street. You can see that, you know, we made an effort to kind of work with the scale of some of the existing surrounding garage structures.
Chair, this is Erin. Could I provide one additional comment?
Please.
In reference to the applicant's questions about potentially approving a relocation as a condition, we wanted to make sure that we made clear that if a separate COA is filed for that relocation of the garage and approved, then that would supersede the demolition conditions on this application, effectively removing the delay if approved.
Right.
And in terms of process, legally, I assume we can put those words in there to make that trigger, or do we have, if we were to do this, no, when we decide, clearly we'd be deciding that there would be a 365-day demolition delay. In the past, we said that the delay could be revisited pending acceptable resolution of an alternative, acceptance of an alternative.
Tanya Tully here. If they filed a new COA to do something different with the garage, it would be unnecessary to revisit it.
I see. So essentially moving the COA to another property would almost negate the demolition occurrence if we approved it, is what you're saying, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that brings up a question for me then. What if the building goes to a property that is not historic? I mean, we're just assuming that this is going to go to another historic property and that we would see it and it would kick that in. But if it's a scenario where that building goes to another property, it would kick it in to have us then do this.
There'd be a COA to move the building, wouldn't there? Inherently, or
Right.
the delay would get run out and it would get moved.
Okay, so
That's
there'd be a
the way.
COA to get to move the building, not move the building to a specific location.
Right.
Well, no, there would be a COA to take it to a specific location.
If it goes
Unless-
outside of the neighborhood.
Unless they filed a COA for it to go out of the neighborhood.
Right. But either way,
But either way, yeah, either way, it would affect that. I just thought that maybe it would not kick in if it wasn't going to another COA neighborhood.
So just I will say, let me just step in here, just out of, I know we're starting to talk about the hypothetical of this moving to another property. And I know we've got Mr. Jones on the call signed up to speak. I believe he's the neighbor that is proposing that move. So Mr. Jones, would you like to kind of provide us with any comments that you may have?
Sure. My wife and I are working with Arrowhead Design Build to do a plan for our backyard. We've been at 702 North Bloodworth Street for about 2 months. And the plan that we have is a preliminary plan, which has not been adjusted yet for the proposed building move. But I have spoken to Josh, who is the owner of the property, and expressed my interest in the building because I was wanting to build something similar on my property, and it is appealing to me, and to move the building and save the structure. So I am going, if this is allowed to go forward, I plan to work with Arrowhead to do the logistics and submit the COA.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Are there any questions from the commission for the applicants?
I just have one question about what I saw in the written statements, John. This is for John Seibert. You noted in there that you have lowered the roof pitch or the roof eave, excuse me, the roof gable to be at the height of the existing house's eave. But when I look at the drawings, I know it's a little detail thing, but it looks ever so slightly higher than the eave.
Hold on. John, which drawing are you looking at in particular?
I am looking at number 10.
John, we won't.
You see what you see the sheet I'm looking at?
You're looking at that front porch?
Yeah. No, I'm looking at the, can you see what I'm looking at here? I'm holding it up.
Unfortunately, John, your camera is off.
Oh.
No, it's there.
No.
It's there.
I can't, I'm not able to see it for whatever.
It's the east elevation from Bloodworth.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah, in your packet, it's page 24, 25.
So if you look at the next drawing, number 10, John?
Yeah.
Do you see we're working towards that roof on the side of the house there? In drawing number 1?
I see what you're saying.
So there's two roof lines actually, and they probably don't correlate exactly to each other. But on the back of the house, there's an existing.
Oh, are you talking about? No, okay. I think what I'm looking at is a drawing marked number 10. Not drawing 10, but the sheet is number 10.
And am I correct in thinking
if you look at drawing number 1, you see there's two roofs. There's the front porch roof, and then there's a back bump out roof.
And it's the bottom eave of the front porch roof that we're aligning to the bottom eave of the new garage structure, correct?
Yes.
Say that again. I'm sorry, just to be clear.
Bottom of eave of existing front porch roof appears to be relatively aligned to the bottom of eave of the new garage structure.
Right, but it is aligned to the rear eave of the first floor bump out on the back of the house.
Gotcha. Which would be detail 1 on this drawing.
Oh, okay. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay, then what is that? Is that what you were referring to when you made the note about it being aligned to the eave?
Yes.
Okay, I'm talking about the overall height of the building of the new garage structure being higher than the second floor eave of the existing house.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about
Oh.
the ridge line?
He's talking about the ridge line.
The ridge line. Yes,
Ridge
thank you.
line, yeah.
And that's what, I think that's what, when that's what I'm in the guidelines and that kind of thing, and looking at what staff has mentioned in the notes, that's what I've always been looking for from an overall perspective of it being a sold deal for me, is that that ridge line be at the eve of the second floor, and it's ever so slightly higher. Now,
Well,
granted, that I may be picky on that because, you know, from a visual, you know, in the street looking at it perspective, that may not matter.
Yeah, I don't think you'd ever notice.
I don't think
I
you'd
mean,
ever
if you look
notice.
at this section, it's gonna really lower the height of the, it's gonna lower it down to like 7 foot upstairs.
Right.
Okay. That's fine. I just wanted to clarify that you said you had hit that eve, and I thought, well, how is he hitting the eve? But now I understand that you're talking about a different eve. That's all.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
good. Okay. That's all I had.
Chair, this is Erin again. Could I add a clarification for the record?
Yes, please.
When reviewing the brief staff presentation at the start of the hearing, I realized that those slides did not get updated to reflect the new staff recommendation for this month. That was from the previous times that this application was before the committee. The recommendation is essentially still the same, to defer and allow for revisions based on the discussion. But I did want to clarify that the discussion suggested by staff is to, in addition to reviewing the massing and scale of the proposed garage, to also look at the form, which has been altered in the designs tonight, and to review the adequacy of the written existing tree information and tree protection measures, and the implementation of the 365-day demolition delay, which we've covered a bit already with the neighbor information. Also, before we conclude the hearing, we should make it explicit whether or not you are choosing to allow the new information to be admitted into the record from the neighbor for, I think it's 702 North Bloodworth, if relevant to your decision tonight.
If I can respond somewhat to that, I would think that we can make a decision without actually going into the movement of the garage, just giving the out in the decision that if the garage is, its location is well, given that the concept that it, if a COA is approved to relocate the garage, we'd vacate the delay automatically. I don't think we really need to dive too deeply into relocation and at all. Otherwise, we're going to be kind of into a whole other case, wouldn't we?
No, I agree what you're saying, Curtis. I think that, but referencing what we just heard from staff,
Yeah.
I think all we do is we just keep the 365 delay,
Yep.
and then let everything else work itself out, because the delay will go away once they do the COA. If they don't do the COA, the delay stands. That's all. And so I don't know that we need to do anything more than just kind of decide if we want to keep the delay or not.
This is Erin. I didn't mean to re-enter the delay discussion. For the record, we need to make explicit whether or not the new information that's uploaded to board docs right now is going to be allowed to be admitted as a part of the record to be considered tonight. That's all we're looking for.
And I take no exception to that.
Me either.
So that's something we need a formal motion and vote on, Erin.
I think that would be best for clarity. Having documents from a separate property related to a project that's not under review tonight is, you know, it's up to you if you want to have it in the record, but it may not be clear.
Okay.
Okay, I see what
I
your
would say let's
question is.
not include it because we're not going to take it into consideration.
Right.
It's not going to change how we approach this. It will be just like any other project because we don't have information that can guide us yet. So
Exactly.
I would like to say that we don't include it.
I'm with you, Janine, on that.
I agree.
Absolutely. I thought you meant some of the other additional information, like all the revised documents,
Well,
Aaron.
and that was my point. That was my question was, is it an all or nothing thing? Because are we going to turn down the other stuff because about the garage thing, about not the garage, but moving the shed?
The shed was introduced after our submittal of our other documents, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Aaron. I'm sorry. I was just referring to the new information document that was not incorporated into the staff report.
Okay. So let's stop talking about the demolition. I mean,
Okay.
But I do have a question though, just to be clear. This is John Seibert. If we do have the 365 delay, and the shed is moved, that delay is still going to be enforced without revisiting it with the committee.
as I understand it, John, if the shed is moved, you're going to need a COA to move it. If the approval for that COA is done, then the demolition delay goes away automatically.
You're substituting moving for demolition, so there's no demolition at that point.
Right.
So I guess I just wanted to make sure it's not clear where we go back to staff and say, well, it's been moved, we'd like to move forward. And they can say, well, the wording here actually says you still have to wait 365.
Well, they're going to know that you're going to move it because you're going to have to apply to move it to the new location.
But it would be a different COA.
It would be a different
Right.
COA, but it would
Tanya Tully here. Staff will it is not uncommon for new COAs to supersede old COAs. That is something we are used to.
Mhm.
If a COA is filed to do something else with the garage, then a note will be made in the file on the letter with the condition for this COA that says this condition no longer valid. See COA blah.
Thank you, Tanya.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any further questions for the applicant before we close the public hearing? Is there anyone, I guess, do we do this on virtual calls? Is there anyone who's present that would like to speak in opposition to this application?
No one signed up to speak in opposition.
Okay, great. And with that, then we will close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion amongst the commission.
Rashay, Madam Chair, let me just make this one comment. I think the staff did ask for some direction on whether the neighborhood additional information should be in the record or not. There was conversation about that, but just to put you on the spot, the chair rules on issues of admissibility of evidence into the record. So it is your call, subject to being challenged and overruled by the other members of the committee. So I think based on what you heard in the conversation just a couple of minutes ago, you could safely just rule that neighborhood evidence is not going to go into the record or is going to go into the record. And I think I heard that one way or the other, but it's your call again.
Okay. All right then. Well, I will move just kind of based on the conversation and sort of being in agreement with it, that the neighbor's evidence is not admitted as part of the record.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Any internal discussion about this application?
I'll start it off with, as far as the proposed new structure. My view on this proposal is that this revised proposal is a great improvement over what we saw before. It's certain the proposed garage is certainly deferential to the main structure when viewed from either adjacent street. And I think the proposed structure being a story and a half rather than 2 stories reads consistent with the forms of the nearby properties on the side street there, Bay Street. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable with what we're looking at.
Janine?
I agree with Curtis's comments. I made a couple of notes that I think staff fact number 22, that this property is larger than most in Oakwood, is something I think is an important distinction. And I do think I really did appreciate that there was a start to document this building, I noticed, and knew in the submitted materials this time, the hardware, the siding, and I think there could be a little more detail put into those drawings, but it's encouraging to think it might not be demolished eventually. I'm trying to understand a little bit. I wanted to touch on the tree protection plan because there was quite a very detailed arborist letter that I think sort of called out all the things we typically look for in graphic form. And I guess my question, it sounded like staff was sort of suggesting that that information needs to get, the verbal information needs to get put into a tree protection plan. And I just wondered if that's important that we ensure that happens, or can that letter just serve as kind of the roadmap that they need to adhere to for tree protection?
Well, and Mike, go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
On the tree protection thing, I think that can be worked out. Can that be worked out with staff that they request a drawing versus just the verbal stuff, and that we don't really have to kind of get involved with that necessarily?
Done that in the past.
Staff, do you want to respond to that?
This is Erin. We certainly can. If you approve the application tonight, let's just make sure that that is included in the conditions.
I have no qualms. I'm completely satisfied. I think that I reiterate what everybody else says. I don't want to take up any more time.
And I guess I'll, if I may,
Sure.
I'll just comment on the 365 delay. I think in my mind, that's something we impose, and you know, hopefully that there's something worked out. I mean, that's the entire intention of the 365-day delay, is that hopefully there can be an alternative to demolition. So I'm encouraged to think that might happen, but I think either way, I would be inclined to impose that delay, which I'd like to see happen.
I agree, and I think it's a lovely luxury that we have, that we know that's already in process. So, as in a resolution to avoid demolition.
Great.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, please.
That if there's, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes if anybody else has anything to say. I mean, per se, do you have anything that you want to talk about? Based on the information contained in the application, staff's evaluation, and this proceeding this evening, demolishing the accessory building and constructing a new garage is not incongruous in concept according to guideline sections 1.3.6.78 and 1.6.6, 1.6.7, 1.6.8, 4.2.4, and 5 and 6. However, demolishing a historic structure is incongruous according to guideline sections 1.3.1, 1.6.1, and 4.2.4. And the form, size, and scale of the proposed garage is not incongruous according to guideline sections 1.6.5, 1.6.11, and the following facts 1 through, bear with me.
There are a lot.
No kidding. 1 through 34. Do I continue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In addition, altering the existing driveway, constructing patio walls and gates, and constructing a retaining wall is not incongruous according in concept according to guideline sections 1.3.1.2.7, 0.8.9, 1.4.128, 1.5.12567.9, and the following facts 1 through 8.
Is there a second?
I'll second. I'd like to offer a little discussion.
Sure.
And this is without any strong feelings here. Would it be clearer to remove in A, demolishing the accessory building and constructing a new garage? Would it be clearer to just say constructing a new garage is not incongruous in concept according to ... And however, demolishing historic structure is incongruous? I think that's an irrelevant change. I will take that back.
Okay. Okay. Is there
No, there's nothing to change.
Okay. Are there any, I know we discussed a couple of the conditions. Are the conditions acceptable as kind of listed in the staff reports? Are there any modifications to those?
I think, is that the second motion we need?
That's a
Yeah, no,
second motion. I think we need to vote on the first, don't we?
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
But I
All
think,
right.
I think what you need, I think, excuse me, but I think what you need to call for is just somebody to second the motion I just
I
made.
think we had a second. Was
Oh,
not, I'll second.
Okay, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that's unanimous. And now for the,
Rashay,
yeah,
I apologize, but the Senate Bill 3 requires that a voice vote be taken. I know announcing that it's unanimous is probably okay, but I think it would be better practice just to get in the habit of calling a roll call vote.
Roll call.
Have each member present vote yes or no.
okay. So when I say all in favor, and then everybody says aye, and then I see Curtis, John, and
First,
No, just step through us.
Shay, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that the motion is accurate when we take the vote. I've been reviewing the staff report, and could you all take a look at section A, fact 18, and that as needed to support the approval, if that is the goal?
Section A. 18, you said?
18.
Certainly
that
the
based
final
on-
sentence can go away.
is that based on what we saw tonight, or is that based on what we saw before that they corrected?
That is tonight, the current application. I'm hearing from Curtis, just remove that last sentence.
Well,
Yes.
that's my inclination, because what we did see in relation to the structure,
Agreed.
that aspect, we've got congruity evidence there, and we have photographic evidence of the balance of the street, or there are adjacent structures. So I think that gets us for the congruity portion of it.
I agree.
Two-story hip roof. Bump out, main roof.
We can just change that to say was provided in reference.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I look at the drawings and I see the relationship.
So you accept that amendment, John?
Yeah.
thank you
Okay.
for that, Aaron. Is there anything else?
Not that I have found, but you will be able to review the minutes in full next month before you approve them and make them final.
Okay.
If you find anything else, you'll see it.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I'll have a follow-up motion.
yes.
I move that we approve this application with the following conditions. That a 365 demolition delay be imposed for the entire existing accessory structure. That, and then the following suggested conditions 2 through 11.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Curtis? And I'd like to propose an amendment that we add condition 12 that tree protection plan drawings be provided.
Very good, thank you.
There is, if I may comment.
Please.
The conditions 5, and I was just reading that 5 and 6 are speaking about the tree protection plan while being implemented, but 6 is asking it to be modified to include critical root zones.
Yeah,
Is
I think if we want it in visual format, we should be clear on that, as opposed to a paragraph that says the critical root zone is 1.25 feet for every inch of radius.
Well, I'm saying number 6 is asking for the tree plan to, oh, okay, you're saying make it specific to a graphic. that they're
To a
adding?
graphic.
Okay,
Because my experience is on construction sites, people don't read specs, they read
they
drawings.
need the visual.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I accept that.
I second.
And you need a roll call.
All right, all in favor?
Nope, one at a time.
Gonna do
I think the easiest thing, just calling the names from the screen is probably the easiest.
Yes.
Okay, Curtis,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I agree as well. All right. So it sounds like this application has been, let's see, is it approved with conditions? Okay. All right, and thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Seibert and also Mr. Jones for your time this evening and your patience with us as we work through your case. We appreciate you bringing this to us and wish you the best of luck on your project. Hopefully we'll see you again soon about a relocation of the structure. Okay, let's move on to our first new application, COA 01532021, 623 West South Street.
South Street.
All right, and sorry, I need to turn the light on in my room real quick for a second. All right. Okay, and it looks like we have 3 people signed up to speak to that. And I'll read your names. As I call your name, if you could state your name and your address for the record, and I will swear you in. So we'll start with Brooke Tate. Are you there, Brooke?
Yes, Brooke Tate, 509 Burton Street, but work address is 115 and a half East Hargett Street.
Great, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. And do you also confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Tate. Okay, David Maurer.
David Maurer, 511 Cutler Street, work address 115 and a half East Hargett Street, Suite 300.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and special procedures?
Yes.
Thank you. And Janet Cowell?
Yes.
Okay. Could you state your address for the record, please?
4407 Laurel Hills Road, Raleigh 27612.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. And with that, we'll turn it over to staff to make a presentation.
Everyone, this is Colette Canane, reaffirming that I am affirmed. While Tanya is pulling up the presentation, should take just a moment.
I will grab that. Mr. Raspberry, do you need to make that same statement about not attorney?
As soon as the initial speaker comes to begin their presentation, that's typically when I would do that, Tanya.
All right, this is case COA 153-2021 for 623 West South Street. It is in the Boylan Heights Historic District, which is a general historic overlay district. The request is to partially enclose a wraparound porch, remove non-historic rear addition, construct two-story addition, install second-story rear deck, replace front door, expose side lights, remove side door and replace with window, replace windows, install gravel walkway, remove portion of gravel driveway, and install stone patio. Next slide. This is a view of the house from West South Street. Next slide. And this is moving east on West South Street to look at the east facade of the house. Next slide. This is another view of that east side. Next slide. So this is a view of the front porch and the area in question, which to be enclosed. And next slide. There's another view of the wraparound side porch, and this is the west facade of the house. Next slide. Some more details of that existing wraparound porch. Next slide. And the existing stone steps. Next slide. This is a view of the rear facade of the house. This is the addition proposed to be removed. Next slide. The staff's suggestion is to discuss the partial enclosure of the porch, and pending the results of that discussion, the recommendation is to approve with conditions. Next slide. This applicant did provide updated information that included updated drawings and updated written description and new door specifications that make some of staff comments in the report irrelevant. And I'll hand it over to the applicant.
Okay.
Is that me?
Before we have our applicant speak, let me ask if the committee's attorney has any preliminary remarks or comments.
Madam Chair, I see that Ms. Tate appears as the first witness on this list. I wonder if she is going to be the first speaker that commences a presentation.
Ms. Tate, is that your plan?
Yes, I was going to allow David Maurer to speak first.
Okay. Generally speaking, if Mr. Maurer is going to be speaking first, let me just direct this somewhat annoying lawyer comment to Mr. Maurer. I'm sure he's heard this before, but I am counsel to the committee and I'm required to make this disclosure under the NC State Bar rules. The bar has issued a formal ethics opinion that representing a party in a quasi-judicial proceeding may constitute unauthorized practice of law. And in this sense, representing a party consists of making arguments, summarizing a case, offering contentions, questioning witnesses, or otherwise advocating for a position in a case. I'm bound by the bar rules to make this disclosure to you. And Ms. Maurer, as you know, I'm sure the committee's practice has been to ask witnesses such as yourself to acknowledge and agree for the record that you are appearing in the case as a fact witness only, and that you agree to refrain from doing the sorts of things that lawyers typically would do in a judicial hearing, that is, making arguments, summarizing a case, advocating for a position, or questioning witnesses. Do you can you agree for the record to that that you're a fact witness only in the case?
Yes, I do agree to be a fact witness and will not pretend to be a lawyer.
Thank you, sir.
I really had nothing more to add. I just wanted to say that we're all here to address any questions or comments, and interested in the conversation about enclosing the side porch.
Janine? You're muted.
Thank you. Before we close the public portion, I did want to ask applicants just to help me be really clear about what new information has been presented. I was only seeing that we went from a solid front door to a 3/4 light door, and I don't want to have missed something. So would you mind just kind of giving us the highlights of what's changed since the initial application?
Yeah, to kind of underline that, it really would have been helpful had we had clouds where the changes were on these drawings. But go on.
Okay, I'll speak to that. The only thing that was revised on the site plan was just an error on one of the trees that I caught after the fact. And the other thing was just that front door went from solid to a 3/4 light. So that's it.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And that took a little bit of our time, I think, to get that understood. So again, just it's helpful just to kind of confirm for us what's changed. And I will compliment you guys on a really nice, thorough application, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to dive in for a second. Yeah, I also agree the bulk of the application is incredibly thorough. There are some issues with your tree protection plan that you just need to revise. If you look at the fence layout detail, it provides a formula for calculating the radius of the fence, and it's actually conflicts with General Note 1. The detail says it's the diameter times 1.25 feet, and Note 1 is radius, and I'm pretty sure you mean radius. In detail 1, at the very bottom of the page, the text says an existing 30-inch diameter hardwood to remain, and the drawing says a 20-inch. The tree directly above that is not dimensioned. And a bulk of the information at the rear of the property is actually not legible in the printing. So you might want to tweak those.
Okay.
Sorry. This is my anal compulsive self hopping in here, right?
Curtis, we'll be glad to do that and submit it to
Yeah.
staff prior to the issue of the placard.
Which is exactly what I think the condition would be.
Thank you for catching that, Curtis. That's some great detail that needs to be included. I didn't want to interrupt. Did you have anything more you wanted to say, Curtis?
I had one other, not a COA requirement, but a suggestion perhaps, that specifically if on the side porch enclosure, if the wall behind the bath could get articulated to indicate the history that there was an opening there, I think that would be a really lovely thing for the long run, for people to figure out what their property is about. And similarly, above the stove in the kitchen where the window was removed, it would sort of say that there was such a thing there and could provide an interesting just detail. Other than that, go through the last of my notes. That was everything.
May I jump in?
Yep.
I want to use this as an opportunity to really clarify definitions of what we mean by what the text says. I can only speak for myself in terms of how I interpret it, but the guidelines talk about front porches and side porches. The guidelines do not talk about wraparound porches, which in my opinion, if they're in the front, it is a front wraparound porch. If it is on the side, it is. If it is on the back and the side, and whichever side is more prominent, that's what it is. But it is the whole thing. It is not a front porch. It is not a side porch. It is a wraparound porch, and this is a front wraparound porch. To that point, I have no problems with enclosing the section of the side of this wraparound front porch, because the evidence that it is a wraparound porch is still very prominent. And the fact that this is one of the wraparound porches that has a side that is almost longer than the front, which I got to tell you, as if I were the original designer of the house, I might have thought this porch is too long. It actually needs a bathroom here. So I commend you on being sensitive to that, and also just in terms of how it is working with the existing house. I have no problem with this application. Minus the tree protection issues, and I do would encourage you on future applications, if is there information that's going to be submitted to the committee after the fact, that it be bubbled. I think Curtis's point to that is very, very helpful.
Janine? You're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I was gonna see if you'd be amenable to closing the public hearing so we could have internal discussion on this.
Yes, I was wondering if there are any more questions for the applicant. And just in general, commissioners, please, let's be thoughtful of that. Questions to the applicant, we'll close the public hearing and then open it to discussion as we move forward. Any other questions for the applicants? Okay. Is there anybody signed up to speak in opposition of this case? Okay. With that, we will close the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay. Janine, did you have any comments you wanted to get us started with?
Sure. As far as the partial enclosure to that porch, I think it does meet the spirit of the guidelines. I think the fact that it is a third of the bays on a secondary elevation is important, I think, to note. Also, that it is a side yard that is actually not as prominent as the other side of the house, I think is also supportive. And I think it's done in a way, just like staff, the fact 3, that was B3 is, does reiterate that it's made very clear that that is a porch enclosure. I think that's done really well, and I have no concerns about this application getting approved.
John? Curtis?
Yeah, I want to reiterate, what I just talked with the applicants about. And I also, because I want to bring this up relative to a case that we had here in Glenwood, Brooklyn, where there was a wraparound front porch, and in that applicant wanted to enclose the entire non-street facing side of that porch, which basically would have rendered a wraparound porch to be only a front porch. They would have basically taken away the entire side, and it would no longer be a wraparound porch. That, to me, was not congruous to the intent of the original design. This application does not do that. There is still strong evidence that there is a complete wraparound porch, and that only a small, less than a third of the side section as being enclosed. And so I think this is a perfect example of how a front porch can be enclosed when it is a wraparound type porch.
I would concur with both Janine and John on that, and just note that for the evidence, this is a typical handling historically of enclosing a section of a porch. Mm-hmm. So I too have no real issues with this application at all. I believe it is not incongruous with the guidelines. Perhaps.
I can go ahead and make a motion.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. I move that based upon the evidence that's been presented in this application, staff evaluation, and during this evidentiary hearing, that the committee finds that removing a non-historic rear addition, constructing an addition, installing a second-story rear deck are not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.1.6, 7.8, 3.1.1, 0.2, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 3.2.2, 0.4, 0.5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and the following suggested facts 1 through 7, And that the partial enclosure of the front porch is not incongruous according to guidelines 2.8.7 and the following suggested facts 1 through 9. And exposing side lights, replacing the front door, and removing a side door, and replacing with a window, and replacing window sashes is not incongruous according to guidelines 2.7.4.7.9.11, and the installation of a 3/4 light front door is not incongruous according to guidelines 2.7.7. And I think we'll have to modify these facts to reflect the new information. So let me. And I think, is this the time for me to go through them right now, or should we have amendments afterwards?
I think we need a second first. Is that-
Either way would work for
Either way. Okay, well, I can say, fact 1 is that the original front door side lights are proposed to be exposed and restored, and the non-historic front door is proposed to be replaced with a 3/4 light door that specs have, and I'm sorry, have specs been provided? And if not, that'll be a condition. And we'll check on that. So that's fact 1. And then fact 2 is fine. And 3. And 4 and 5. And that installing a gravel walkway, removing a portion of gravel driveway, and installing a stone patio are not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.1.2.7.8.9, 1.5.1.5.6.9, and the following facts 1 through 4.
Okay. I'll second.
Okay, great. So I guess, let me know if you're in favor.
Well, actually, before we do this, I'd like to suggest an amendment.
Okay.
Janine, on the A, the removing a non-historic addition, You cited facts 1 through 7. I think you meant to cite facts 1 through 17.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I did.
Right, and that amendment is accepted. Okay, so those in favor, Janine?
Aye.
John? Curtis?
Aye.
And I as well. So that is unanimous. And then a follow-up motion?
Sure. I move that a certificate of appropriateness be approved for this application with the following conditions. 1, 2, 3. We don't need 4. So omit that. But we do need specs for that 3/4 light door if it's not been provided.
This is Colette. They were provided.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we don't need to pull out the door as a condition. Front door, number 5 and 6.
Okay, I'll second and propose an amendment.
Okay.
Amendment B that condition 3, that tree protection plan be corrected, submitted to and approved by staff, comma, and then implemented and remain in place for the duration of construction. So we get that
That sounds
correction.
good.
And then on 6, B be amended to say paint colors if changing, and C be deleted. The typo.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, let's go around the room. Curtis?
Aye.
Okay, John? Janine?
Aye.
Okay, and that is an aye for me as well, so that is unanimous. So thank you all. Your application has been approved by the committee this evening. Thank you, Mr. Matter, Ms. Tate, Ms. Cowell for your time, and good luck with your project. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next COA application. That is COA 0154 2021 506 Cole Street. I've got one speaker listed for that, Mr. Ryan Johnson. Are you there?
Yes, Ryan Johnson, 4126 Rockingham Drive, Raleigh.
Okay, and do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
I do confirm.
Okay, great. And with that, we will turn it over to staff for the presentation.
Hello, everyone. This is Colette again. I am acknowledging that I am still affirmed. The case here is COA case 154-2021 for 506 Cole Street. It is in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District, which is a street side HOD. And the request is to construct a house, install driveway, and install front walk. Next slide. So I only have one photo for you. This is a view of the current property. It is currently a vacant lot. The previous house on this site was demolished through an earlier COA several years ago. Next slide. And staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions.
Okay, before we hear from the first speaker, let me ask if the committee's attorney has any preliminary remarks or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you were tuning in at the previous hearings on the previous cases, but I offered a comment concerning a rule of the North Carolina State Bar to the effect that representing a party, and I see in your application, or at least on the agenda sheet, that you're appearing for an entity, that if one is representing a party in a quasi-judicial hearing in the sense of making arguments or questioning witnesses or summarizing a case, that may constitute an authorized practice of law. Our practice with the committee is to ask, in order to address this rule, is to ask witnesses such as yourself, if you would please acknowledge and agree on the record that you're appearing in this case as a fact witness only, and that you'll refrain from offering arguments or summarizing the case or questioning witnesses and so forth, the sorts of things that lawyers would typically do in quasi-judicial proceedings. If you would agree to that and state that for the record, we would appreciate that.
Sir, I agree to be a fact witness and not be an attorney.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you for that. So, Mr. Johnson, do you have anything that you would like to share with the commission this evening?
I'm just
application.
Thank you. I'm just here to answer questions and provide clarity and absorb your response and your comments.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, we'll open it to the commission to ask questions to the applicant. Curtis?
Trying to be better here. I have a question as far as the location on the site relative to the adjacent structures. From the map of the district, it appears that you're intending that the front of the porch align with the front of the porch on the two adjacent properties. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And will the body of the house itself also align with the bodies of the houses on the adjacent properties?
It will, because the depth of the porches are very similar. We're actually going to be in between because the house to the right is further forward than the house to the left. So
yeah, they're a little off. Yeah.
They're a little off.
Okay, I appreciate that. That was the right answer from my point of view. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
John?
I live in the same neighborhood, so I'm just across. I'm on the good side of Glenwood.
Does that make this the evil side, or?
I'm just gonna stop with us being on the good side. I've looked at the drawings and stuff, and and there's nothing about the application that I think has any glaring red flags. I just have comments, or at least questions about choices, a couple of design choices, because we are in a craftsman neighborhood, and I think that that's kind of spelled out pretty clearly. I look at the front porch that you've designed, and I can't help but think that that little triangle thing over the front and the columns that you've chosen are more federalist than they are craftsman. I also look at the pictures that you all used as evidence for the type of front porch that you want to use. And interestingly enough, and this is true about most craftsman designs that I am aware of, either the porch is a gable or the porch is a shed, but it is not a gable with a little, a shed with a little gable. If it is, then that gable becomes a dormer of some sort and actually has a window in it or some sense of a second or half story. I'm just questioning the continuity of the intent. And I do applaud you for this, the front facing symmetry and the cleanliness of all that. And this is my personal thing, I wish the sides had as much order as the front does. But again, because we are a street facing district, there's very little comment that I can, somewhat make about that. I do applaud you for not putting in horizontal little bathroom windows, which I see all the time on neo fake traditional homes. So I applaud you for that very much. At least you didn't take that route. But I do question those two little details, because columns in a craftsman style are built up. That's the point, is that they're, a Tuscan column that's all a piece of wood is a lot more expensive in old days than a built up column was. And that's why you see more of that type of column in Oakwood than what you see in Glenwood, Brooklyn. As you can see, even in the front, 508 and 502 Cole Street, both of those columns, shape, aside, are built up columns. They are crafted in some way. And again, like I said, both of those porches are shed or wrap around skirts to the house. And if there is a pediment, that pediment is the porch, not a decoration on the porch. I hope that makes sense.
That makes sense. And at 502, that's where they're built up on the one to the other side. I think they're just straight brick columns. So they're not built up.
Well, and what I mean by built up is that they are created by hand, some sort of hand.
Got
so
it.
Brick being built up is the same thing to me as wood being formed to create a column.
Actually,
Gotcha.
the turn column is kind of not congruous. Is that what your thought is? Are you saying that the turn column, the Tuscan column,
I can't go that far. Okay. I'm just saying that from what my understanding of craftsman design are built up columns, not one piece columns.
Mr. Reese, I think what we were trying to do is to provide a difference between the existing houses and the new house, because in the guidelines it was saying you want to look similar but different. Is the best way for me to play. And so that's where it was kind of tough, and we want to do that, because if we would have done some, we've looked at some like built up columns we've done before, like exactly the brick full story columns, and it becomes kind of tough, is that we didn't want to look like we were
Well,
trying
and,
to.
and I applaud you for that. I think that's important to understand. And I think that the process of the design, in terms of how the column is made is more important than the actual what the column looks like, because it is the process of, it is craftsman design is a process, not something that you just select a shape and then, shop around for. And so I think that the idea of how the column is made is more important than what the column is. Does that make sense? I'm not being very clear about that. But
It's more of the detail behind it and not just what it is, but how it's,
exactly.
how it's fabricated, the texture, the details, and what you have there.
Yeah, following the craftsman theory versus just finding a different column to make it look different. Those two things can be hand in hand. You can still follow craftsman theory and create something that does not look like the everything else, in the, in terms of timing and all that other stuff. But I think, given the fact that the point here is that it just be congruous to the concept of craftsman, and I think that there could be more work done towards that, although it's not going to impede my decision about how on the approval process.
That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I know I get into my professorial yapping, so I apologize for over yapping.
Are there any other questions from the commission for the applicant? Okay. All right. At this time, we'll close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion. Curtis, did you have any comments?
No, I have no issues. I'm good.
Okay. Janine?
I don't have any additional comments.
Okay. John, you made a lot of comments, and so do you want to?
Yeah,
do you have any other
I
comments?
just have to shut up and kind of roll with it. But thank you for letting me do my piece and at least be educational, I hope, in the process.
Sure, certainly. Well, with that, I'm going to ask you to make a motion as an extension of your comments.
I don't get to say things like we can't do pediments.
No, he didn't mean that.
I know. Isn't that awful of me? It's like, shoot. Okay. Based on the information contained in the application, the staff's evaluation, and the information presented in this hearing, the construction of a new house, installation of a driveway, and installing a front walk are not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.6, 0.7.9.12, 1.5.5, 0.6.9, 3.3.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 0.10, 11, 12, and the following facts. 1 through 33.
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote on that. Janine?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Okay, and it's an aye for me as well, so that is unanimous. All right, and a follow-up motion from John.
Yes, thank you. Bear with me.
Okay.
I move that we approve the application with the following conditions. 1 through 6.
Second.
All right, let's go around the room again. Janine?
Aye.
Okay. John?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Okay, and that's an aye from me as well, so that also is unanimous. So this application has been approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for your time and your thoughtfulness with this application. And we wish you the best of luck with your new home.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
The good side, bad side, whatever.
Whatever side you're on.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on to our next COA case. That's COA 0155-2021, 309 North Blunt Street. And we have two people listed speaking on that. Mr. Jim Grady, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, I swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And also Miss Jessica Hughes?
Yes, hello. This is Jessica Hughes. My work address is 309 North Blunt Street in Raleigh.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
I do.
Great. Okay, and with that, we will turn it to staff for presentation.
Hello, everyone. It is Colette again. I remain affirmed, and this is case COA 0155-2021 for 309 North Blunt Street. This is the Hick Andrews House, a Raleigh historic landmark. And the request is to install 2 hanging porch signs. Next slide. So this is a view of the house from North Blunt Street. And next slide. And here's a better detail of the front porch. Next slide. This is a view from the intersection of Blunt Street and North Street, looking at both sides of the house here where the signs are to be installed. Next slide. Here's a view from East North Street where the rear sign is proposed. And next slide. And a detail of that rear porch. Next slide. Staff's suggestion is to discuss the size of the sign proposed on the Blunt Street facade.
Okay, and before we have our applicant speak in this case, let me ask if our committee's attorney has any preliminary remarks or comments.
Mr. Grady, will you be the first speaker as the committee hears this case?
Yes.
All right. I apologize if you have been listening in to the previous cases where I've offered these remarks before the initial speaker, but I see from the write-up on this case that you're appearing for James Grady Architecture PLLC. The NC State Bar has adopted a bar rule to the effect that representing a party in a quasi-judicial hearing can be the unauthorized practice of law. And in this context, representing the applicant consists of summarizing or presenting a case, making arguments, questioning witnesses, offering contentions, or generally being an advocate for a party. I'm bound by the bar rules to make this disclosure to you, and the committee's practice to address this bar rule is to ask witnesses such as yourself if before speaking you would acknowledge and agree for the record that you're appearing in this matter as a fact witness only and not to do any of the list of things I just mentioned that attorneys would typically do in representing a party. Would you, and to answer questions, to be a fact witness and to answer questions only in the case. Would you acknowledge and agree for the record that this is acceptable to you?
Yes, it is.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Raz. Mr. Grady, did you have anything that you wanted to share with the commission in advance of any of their questions?
Well, my question is, I was thinking of perhaps summarizing my design intent, but is that in fact what I'm not supposed to do, Mr. Raspberry? To highlight what I was trying to do in my drawings?
If I may respond, Madam Chair, you as the architect for this proposal may certainly testify as to your work and your including opinions regarding the design. It's a fine line, I realize, between doing what a lawyer would do and making an argument and having a professional witness such as yourself just present your history of the work on this project. So short answer, yes, you may testify to that effect.
Okay, I just wanted, you have the written description with quite a bit of detail. I just wanted to, highlight a couple of things in the presentation. There on the front elevation there on drawing A5, you can see the proposed sign that was going to be discussed. And I just want to say my design intent there was to size that appropriately to the size of that house, which is rather large. And also it's fairly far back from the street and the sidewalk. And I wanted you to notice that I've tried to align the height of the sign, those horizontal lines, with the heights of those double post column caps. And just point out, as far as the colors, we had made a submittal there of materials and colors that show the sign at the Greensboro office of the North Carolina Association of Realtors. And that's the appearance of the sign that we're proposing, is to have that type of a look, the light and dark bronze.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Grady. Ms. Hughes, did you have any follow-up comments?
Thank you, Chair. I'm primarily here to answer any questions that you all might have this evening, and just to say thank you for hearing our request.
Thank you, no problem. Commissioners, do you all have any questions for the applicant?
Will this sign be lit?
No.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anyone else? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion. Curtis?
I think reading staff comments about the size of the front sign relative to the size of other signs that have been approved, I certainly understand where they're coming from. That said, those other buildings were substantially less massive than this one. And my impression is that the sign is actually, as proposed, appropriately sized, given the size and scale of this building. I don't think it overwhelms. In fact, I think it sits rather quietly on the porch there, and is certainly reversible. So that's certainly not an issue. I actually have comfort with the proposed sign.
Yeah, I agree with you, Curtis. The simple, a simple way to kind of check this to see if it's the right size is to do a proportional study of the opening and then match that proportion to the sign. And I think that that's been done just through eyeballing it. No one really in the presentation said that was how they arrived at the sign, at the size of the sign, but that would be an appropriate measure in a historic building to get to an appropriate sized sign, is to base it on the proportions of the building. And I think that that's fine. I think this is fairly clear.
Janine?
I am going off of design guideline 1.8.2, where it says to introduce new signage compatible in a numerous amount of variables, including size, width and character with the building or the district. And I definitely think with the significant size of this building that sign feels compatible with the scale of that building. One thing I just wanted to note, and this won't change my feeling about this placement, but there is a tree that, to me, it seems like it's blocking a lot of the visibility of that sign. And I'm just pointing that out for the applicant. And I know you see that front facade from coming and going down that street. Well, I guess it's a one-way street, but you know, you'll see it from different points, not just front on, but it did kind of catch my eye that at some point you just don't see that sign at all behind an existing tree in the front yard. But that's my feeling about that front sign, that it feels like it fits that space. It's compatible with the scale.
With that, can I, yes, John, go ahead,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
Lovely, thank you. Based on the information contained in the application, staff's evaluation, and the evidence presented in this hearing, installing 2 hanging porch signs is not incongruous according to guideline sections 1.8.2, 0.4, 0.5, 0.7, 0.10, 1.8, 11. And the size of the Blunt Street sign is not incongruous according to guidelines 1.8.2 and the following suggested facts.
Is not?
No, it's not incongruous.
Oh, yes.
That
You got
double
it.
negative.
Yes, that double negative. Yeah. The following facts, 1 through 11.
I second.
Okay, let's go around the room. Curtis?
Aye.
Okay. Janine?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
That's an aye for me as well, so that's unanimous. John, is there a follow-up motion?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we approve this application with the following conditions, 1, 2, and 4.
Second.
All right, let's go around the room. John?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
That's an aye for me as well, so that's unanimous. Well, thank you, Mr. Grady and Ms. Hughes. Your application has been approved. We appreciate you waiting with us and working with us this evening. And, you know, enjoy that wonderful, large, beautiful historic building.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, we have COA application 10156-2021, 410 Glenwood Avenue.
I gotta run upstairs.
Right, and it looks like we have 6 people signed up to speak for this application. So I'm just going to start with Fred Belladin. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Could you state your address for the record, please?
711 Gaston Street.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And do you confirm and assent to the remote meeting and the special procedures?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Jason Davis, are you there?
I am.
Okay. Could you state your address for the record, please?
Sure. 4800 Hampton Lane in Bethesda, Maryland.
Thank you so much. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, great. All right. And as we move forward, if I pronounce your name wrong, please correct me and I'll try to get it right the next time. Mr. Morris Adjemi?
Hi, I'm here, and that's perfect. Thank you. I'm used to spelling my name and hearing it mispronounced since I was in kindergarten, but that was perfect. Thank you.
Great, great. All right. Mr. Adjemi, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. And then do you also confirm and consent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lucas Posada? Is Mr. Posada on the line?
Yes, hello.
Hi. Could you state your address for the record, Mr. Posada?
Yes, 60 Broad Street, New York, New York.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
I do.
Okay. Miss Brittany Macumber?
Yes, hello.
Hi. Could you state your address for the record, please?
Sure, it's 195 Underhill Avenue, Brooklyn, New York.
Great, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures? Great, thank you. And lastly, I have Myrick Howard. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, great. Could you state your address for the record, please? Could you state your address for the record, please? I'm not sure if you muted.
206 Woodburn Road, Raleigh. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And then do you confirm and assent to this remote meeting and the special procedures?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. With that, we will turn to the staff presentation.
Hello, everyone. For the last time this evening, this is Colette Kinane, and I remain affirmed. This is case COA 0156-2021 for 410 Glenwood Avenue. It is the former Pine Strait Creamery, a Raleigh historic landmark. The request is to construct a new building, construct loggia, construct Wooner, make changes to COA 118-2020, and implement a signage plan. Next slide. We have several photographs here since this is a pretty large site. So beginning on Tucker Street, this is a view looking towards the south. Next slide. And this is a little further to the west on Tucker Street. You can see part of the historic building on the right side of the screen. Next slide. Still on Tucker, a little more detail of the building. Next slide. This is a view from the Tucker-Glenwood intersection, looking at the main body of the historic building. Next slide. And continuing to move south on Glenwood Avenue, the historic building. Next slide. Still on Glenwood Avenue, this is an addition to the building. Next slide. I'm looking towards the north back at that addition. Next slide. This is a view from West North Street. So the opposite side from Tucker, looking north at the property. Next slide. And staff's suggestion is to discuss the pedestrian scale of the Tucker Street facade and the proposed signage plan. And new information has been provided by the applicant. That includes updated drawings and an updated packet reflecting some of the changes they made. We also have prepared a presentation that outlines those changes that they will walk you through. But I guess I'll pass it to Raz to give off his spiel. And we'll pull up the applicant presentation.
Thank you, Colette. Madam Chair, I just wanted to confirm that Mr. Belladin, my understanding is that he would be the lead-off presenter for this case. If Mr. Belladin could just confirm, I'll offer these comments to him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Belladin, I know you have heard this sometimes annoying lawyer comment before, but as you have heard and as you're aware, the NC State Bar has issued an ethics opinion that says that representing a party in a quasi-judicial local government hearing can constitute unauthorized practice of law. And I'm obligated by the bar rules to make this disclosure to you. In this context, representing a party, in this case, the applicant, is construed as presenting a case, summarizing a case, interviewing witnesses, questioning witnesses, presenting evidence, expressing contentions, or otherwise being an advocate and doing the listed things that lawyers typically do in courts of law. The practice of the commission to avoid getting into trouble with this or not fulfilling my legal obligation is to ask if you would please acknowledge and agree for the record that as you make your presentation in the case, if you would please refrain from summarizing a case, presenting arguments or contentions, questioning witnesses, or otherwise serving as someone representing a party in an advocacy way to this proceeding. If you would, for the record, acknowledge that you agree to that, we would appreciate it.
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, with that, I believe Mr. Belladin is going to begin the presentation.
Sure. I'll offer a brief introduction. And just as a reminder for the committee, this is the second phase tonight of a two-phase submission. Phase one, which included the overall project massing, height, and step back, was submitted last year and received unanimous approval from your committee in September of 2020. And tonight we're presenting phase two, which is focused on the full architectural design and character of the buildings and their relationship to the existing historic creamery. One quick note, as Colette alluded to, we submitted this package nearly a month ago on September 30th. And in the intervening period of time, we've received really helpful feedback from RHDC staff and from DRAC. And we've continued to work on and develop some of the aspects of the design to reflect those comments and to better align with the historic guidelines. So this short presentation is simply to walk you through the design concept and, in the interest of clarity, to outline the changes from the original application that you received a couple of weeks ago. So with that, I'd like to introduce Morris Adjemi of Morris Adjemi Architects.
Good evening. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Colette. Good evening, Chair Height and Commissioners. And if I may, Raz, I like that. Can we have the next slide, please? So as Fred mentioned, we submitted our drawings in September, and we subsequently submitted drawings that reflect some changes that we made from comments from RHDC staff as well as from the DRAC. But I just want to talk about the overall design. And after the phase one was approved, we focused on the architectural details and the facade of the proposed building. And so I'd like to give you a brief overview of that and then talk about some of the changes that we made subsequent to the original submission. So here we have a view of the project from Glenwood and Tucker. And you can see the building is divided into base, a middle, and an upper portion of the building. You can see the details on the right side. And we believe that we've drawn from the existing creamery building, particularly the corner, the brick, the materials in the window, to create a harmonious relationship between the two buildings. The lower portion shows the factory style windows. The center section shows the skin for the parking section, and the upper is the office building. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on the next slides. Next slide, please. The changes that we made really, and this is a summary, were to increase the height of the middle spandrel panel and the sign band, which you see on the upper left, and I'll show you more details as well. And we widened the portion, the mullion spacing, which was a direct reference to the creamery windows, and we added brick at the lower portion of the building to add to the detail and human scale of the lower portion of the building. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, sorry. And on the parking facade, we also added more detail, which I'll show you in more detail in a second. Next slide, please. This is the storefront that was submitted at the end of September on the 30th, and you'll see in the subsequent images that the proposed or the suggestions and the proposed changes are real serious improvement, significant improvement, we believe. Next slide. And here shows the resubmitted elevation. And if we go to the next slide, I'll gives you a better sense of the detail. So here was a previous proposal. You can notice the sign band is narrower, and we were showing concrete at the base. In the next image, you see the proposed design, which has the widened sign bands, modification to the mullion pattern, and the addition of the brick inlay at the columns, which we think is a real improvement and brings the scale down at that pedestrian level. Next slide, please. This is identifying the center section, which is the parking structure. This is the previously submitted. The next slide shows the additional articulation of the facade and the skin, which we'll see in more detail in the next slide. This is the previous, and then the next slide shows that detailing. So we added mullions, some additional channels, and you see the bracing, which is a reference to the Creamery logo, the original Creamery logo. And then the next slide, I think Fred's going to speak to.
Sure. And one of the staff comments we received was that we did not directly address guidelines 3.5.2, 0.3, and 0.7. So we added additional sheets into the revised application that speak to these guidelines, specifically with regards to the detail, mass scale, and articulation at the pedestrian realm. So with that, we're excited to hear your comments, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any questions from the commission or the applicants? John?
Hi, Fred. My biggest question is, I don't see any, this is a huge urban design project, and I am going at this less from a landmark building project, which basically has a tendency to put it in a category of a belly button, meaning that it's the only thing that matters, versus an urban construct, which basically creates or could create a peg in a bigger board that relates to the rest of the pegs in that board. Specifically, I'm kind of going off of Kevin Lynch's book of Image of the City, which talks about paths, edges, districts, nodes, and landmarks, this being a landmark. But there is not in the entire plethora of information, and there's a lot, I've never seen something so big, that talks about the urban aspects of this project relative to the district. It only talks about it relative to the actual site itself. And what gives me great concern is that this is not in a vacuum, and that the placement of the parking garage, if we had a better system of the drawing that can scale out a little bit, there's a parking garage across the street from this parking garage. There is a new development to the east called Smoky Hollow, which has tried to create a kind of urban plaza element within its courtyard, and then make reference back with its kind of gateway element back to the Glenwood South District. My question is, my concern is that now we have, in this proposal, we have two parking garages facing each other, and the way the design is laid out kind of set the whole design kind of says the front of the only thing that matters is this Glenwood South face and how the project addresses it. But I don't see how the project addresses the rest of the district, because if we think about being or trying to at least get things together, I don't know how this project does that well, because, you know, on the east side, we're basically putting up a wall there. And I know there's the railroad track and everything through there, but there is, you know, if we were considering the nodes, the districts and the paths and the edges and of the bigger picture, there's a wonderful opportunity to make linkages to those other zones, and specifically Smoky Hollow. And aside from the scale of this parking garage, which I got to tell you has it's the biggest thing I've seen that has such a blank facade. I'm concerned about, can you address more about why you guys have not reached out beyond the property itself to talk more about the linkages that this thing has to other spaces and other areas in the district?
So this is Fred. I'm happy to defer to staff's wisdom on this. And John, you raise a lot of great urban design points, which I'd love to discuss in detail, but for the purposes of this, we're tasked with responding specifically to the character of the landmark. This is not in a historic district. So
Okay.
all of the presentation that you're looking at is geared specifically to the relationship between the new construction and the existing building.
So we are limited to the belly button. I mean, that's kind of a crass way to say it, but we are limited to only talking about the elements within this block. We are not going to be discussing bigger picture issues.
Hi, John. This is Colette. Yes, Fred is correct. There is not a designated district for you to consider in this situation. It is, your focus is the landmark and how this proposed project impacts that landmark.
Okay, thank you. Well, then to that point, I just want to make it a little point to you, Fred, that in addition to that kind of urban thing that I picked up on, what also told me that this is, it's almost as if there's a small misunderstanding of the context that this thing sits in, and the most intimate little detail that I picked up on in the first rendering that you all have shown of the view from Glenwood Avenue and Tucker Street is that the shadows are wrong, which tells me that, you know, even in terms of how you're thinking about sunlight and impact on this building in that context, the shadows are wrong, which tells me what else how are you thinking beyond the form is what I'm trying to get to.
This is Morris. I want to jump in. I think one image got pulled off before we finished the presentation, and I don't know if Colette could pull up that last image on Glenwood. One of the things that we really looked at carefully was giving the space and honoring the historic structure. We're creating a plaza. We're looking at details of how the Woonarf creates a space between the Creamery building and the new building. And we spent a lot of time looking at how those relationships presented themselves. So I think our idea is that we're celebrating the existing building. We're drawing details in terms of the materials, the brick, the concrete, trim and lentils, as well as the articulation of the windows and details on the facade.
Any additional questions for the applicant from the commission? Curtis?
Well, first off, I want to say that when I saw the initial application, I was kind of taken way aback by the parking garage. But then I noticed the revised application offered a hell of a lot more detail in that parking garage, and which made it seem less monolithic. Because initially, my reaction was that it was overwhelming the creamery. But seeing the updated texture and fenestration on that parking garage structure, I'm way more comfortable with it. Specific and what one thing I see that kind of reads two different ways was on page 52 of the revised packet, a guideline 3.5.5. The proposed facade middle tier drawing doesn't read as having strong banding, whereas the rendering adjacent to it does. Am I correct in assuming that the rendering adjacent to it is really much more taking into account shadow lines from those components and breaking up that texture?
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to say also that really the improvement on the base tier with the strengthened sign band and the inset brickwork, I thought was huge in making the scale feel better and also acknowledging the historic structure. So I found that to be an extreme improvement. Lastly, not a COA comment, but a word of warning from some experience I've had with the expanded metal. You really want to make sure you get rolled expanded metal and that's been flattened instead of the stuff that's straight off of the expansion machine, because what'll happen is the unrolled stuff will catch on fabric and blowing plastic bags and rip fabric and also just become a plastic bag gallery. Take this as painful advice. Choose to do it, don't choose to do it. It'll have nothing to do with the COA, but because it'll read the same either way. But you might want to be careful there. And that's my 2 bits.
Janine, did you have any comments? Questions?
I'll make the comment that I appreciate the applicants walking us through these changes. I took a lot of time trying to figure out the difference between the first submission you gave and the 60+ pages of the second that we just received. And again, I think this is maybe something we've repeated already tonight, but making that clear for us, I think, is in your best interest and just really makes our jobs a lot easier so we can come to these meetings understanding your submission as well as we can for that. So I appreciate you kind of highlighting that for us as we move forward. And I'll echo some of what Curtis said about, I think, a lot of the scale moves that you've done between the first and second application were very successful in making the small parts to the project seem to work much better for the pedestrian scale. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff that I'm really looking to gain response from the applicant, which is one of staff's comments is that the amount of signage proposed is incongruous. And I'm wondering if the applicant can address that a little bit. And staff also can first articulate a little more where their discomfort's coming from.
Sure, that's a great question. And in the initial application, if you remember, we were just showing general areas for where signs would go, but not really articulating where within those general areas the signs would go. So with the revised application, what we've endeavored to do is really identify the specific areas within the facade that we would be looking at for the different sign types. And then within each of those areas, if you look at the text in the sidebar to the right, it indicates the actual size limits themselves. And in some cases, even though we might be showing signs adjacent to one another, for instance, at the top of the tower and at the crown, it's generally an either or proposition. Part of it is having sat in all of your chairs before. I know you really don't want to see 10 or 12 or 20 sign applications come before you. So we've been trying to endeavor to find a way that we could box it in a way conceptually that made sense to all of you and would give staff the discretion then to kind of review at a staff level. And if anything does differ or warrant coming back before you, we can do that, but not necessarily every single time. Does that make sense?
Yes. And for staff, Colette, are you staff feeling more comfortable with the amount of signage on the revised application?
This is Colette. Yes, I do think that what has been submitted is much improved and clearer. I think that we as staff would like to perhaps spend a bit more time with what they have offered to really understand. It was a lot of information, but it does provide substantially more detail than the original.
And would your staff be comfortable having that conversation as part of additional details and conditions?
Yes, I would suggest, though, that it be worded as a condition such that if staff feels that the amount of signage is still substantial, that it be brought back to the committee for review.
Okay.
I think that sounds perfectly reasonable, Colette. Thank you.
Cool. That's it for me.
Okay. So if there are no more questions for the applicant, we'll close the public hearing and turn to internal discussion.
I'll start off.
Okay. Curtis?
For me, I am comfortable with the pedestrian scale of the Tucker Street facade in the revised application. I was not in the initial application. For that reason, I see it as very congruous or not incongruous with the historic building. So I'm not taking exception there. As I said in my earlier comment, the change in detail on the parking deck middle band was really just completely swayed me from incongruous to not incongruous in terms of its compatibility and its relationship to the historic building. So those elements really have moved me towards wanting to approve the application pretty much with the conditions as listed, of course with a stronger sign review condition. But other than that, I'm quite comfortable with what I'm seeing relative to the guidelines.
Thanks, guys. Any other comments from commissioners? John?
I'm going to have to just go on the record that I'm still uncomfortable. I think that the location of the parking garage to the street is too close. I think that the improvements and while the drawings seem to suggest that that parking garage facade is more detailed, to me, those are just lines on a page. They right now give no real understanding of what one would see in daylight versus evening or nighttime. I think that it will come off as blank and somewhat of a bunker. I am very uncomfortable with both the location and the design of that parking garage.
If I can respond to that, looking at page 52 of the revised submission, if this thing read in life like the drafting on the left side of the middle tier illustration, and not as the right side of the middle tier illustration, I would be right there with you. And I very much appreciate your concern about night versus day and how it would read. Although my sense is that it would be actually feel like it has more detail at night, assuming a lit parking garage on the interior going through the screen, because it would be kind of half-toned and so.
Well, let me jump in there for a second.
Sure.
With you, Curtis, because the floor lines of that garage are not the floor lines expressed in that facade.
Okay.
So what you would see at night is not what you're going to see in that rendering.
Okay.
That is that facade is an applied veneer to a background that has nothing to do with that design.
Okay.
With the visual there. So I'm bothered by this.
I hear you. I mean, as I was reading this drawing, I was reading this as the primary parking levels are going to align with the fenestration, because that's what the drawing seems to say.
It looks like a section that is implying that, but John, you're anticipating a sloping parking garage, which is not what we're seeing here, so.
Right.
Have we closed the public application or?
We can, but we can open it.
But we can reopen it.
Because I think that is a question that if we take this we're speculating that this is incorrect. And I think maybe just to get some clarity on that would be helpful.
Okay, let's reopen the public hearing. Right. And I think Fred, Mr. Billiton, you've heard the question. Do you or anyone on your team want to address the response to that parking deck question?
Sure. Lucas or Brittany, would you like to help clarify this?
Yeah, certainly I can. This is Lucas. And Brittany, I don't know if you have a section drawing, but the intention is for the portions along the railroad side to really be the ramps. And so the portion that you're seeing in the section, which would be towards Glenwood side, would align with where the slab covers are shown.
Let me look at sheet 9.
And that's shown on 11 of the presentation we just made.
Well, again, we can talk about it as much as we want to, but until I actually see a model of this in daylight and nighttime, I'm sorry, I don't believe you.
One of the things I have in looking at the page 9 of the revised submission, it does tend to contradict what you're saying there, where we're seeing ramps along the long sides of the garage and flat on the short sides of the garage. So that would tend to contradict that assertion. Is the plan on the left-hand side, levels 2 through 9, is that incorrect? Is this a situation where we're ramping towards the core of the garage and the outer side of the garage are multiple parallel floors?
Yes, it's a double helix garage, Curtis.
Okay. Yeah, but a double helix garage can have sloped floors over the body of it, right? Because that's not what's drawn here, really.
Right.
Hello, this is Brittany from MA.
Yeah.
You're correct. There are portions. There are some flat portions there, but in the middle there will be some sloped parking in those areas.
It looks like it's the bulk of it is sloped, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, until I can be satisfied with what this garage, how this garage actually lives, or how it would sit and present itself in totality, not just on the skin surface. That's I'm having a hard time saying supporting this because I just don't feel like the information of the reality of the scenario is clear.
I kind of agree with you now, John. One question that would maybe put both of our minds to rest, is there any intention of illuminating the exterior surface of the garage section? Because I ask this because I know the mesh will behave as a scrim. And if the outside is illuminated, the inside will not read particularly strongly. But if the inside is brighter, the mesh will disappear.
Well, and to that point too, Curtis, the scrim, again, that's where the lines that they show in the elevations, that could be just a joint line like this, you know.
That's not how I'm reading it. Their reading here is being pretty strong.
Well, but it's still.
So, excuse me.
Yeah.
The public hearing is still open.
Sorry.
So questions are being posed and you guys are answering them internally. So let's have the applicants have an opportunity to answer.
Sure.
The first question I heard was about the parking garage being illuminated. Could someone in the applicant team address that question?
Thank you.
Sorry.
We are not showing illumination at this time, but if that's something that the committee is more comfortable with, the developer, the owner has just confirmed that, yes, we can illuminate the exterior facade.
Not necessarily dying for illumination, but
well, you know,
it would address the movement. Sorry.
And then, Curtis, the second point you made related to the visual weight of the different lines that you're seeing, I believe that's already a staff condition for enhanced or final details on all of these things. But if it's not, that can certainly be a condition to clarify all of that and to ensure that we're hitting the shadow lines that you're looking for.
I wanted to just reiterate that too, that, you know, I do have some concern about during the daytime, how, you know, skin-like this will look. And I think we're getting to a really good point where I think we're understanding we need more detailing on this, but just understanding what the applicant's just talking about and depth and shadow line, because during the day, it doesn't matter if you're washing anything with light. It's already washed with light. Yeah.
And you get the shadows of that going through there. And, you know, I just don't think there's enough design input put into the, I think that, you know, it's interesting to me, this project, if we are limited to discussing the objects that are here, this project is about this garage.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
A question for staff, which we have to do all open, right? The limitations of our review, they do include the parking garage face, right? That is not outside the district or the landmark. That's inside the landmark, correct? Like and I'm asking specifically about the west face of the garage, because your request for details typically relate to the south face of things, not the garage in particular.
This is Colette. Garage is within the landmark boundary.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
And Verche, this is, before you close the public hearing, I'd like to remind you that Mr. Howard also signed up to speak.
Ah.
Hey, thank you for that. I just assumed everyone was a part of the same team. So Mr. Howard, would you like to offer your thoughts?
I'm Myrick Howard with Preservation North Carolina, as most of you know, and I'm just here because we anticipate being able to put a historic preservation easement on the historic fabric here that will permanently protect it. So the 365 days will not be the limit of protection. It will be permanent protection. And technically, this is not part of y'all's review, but if there are questions related to that, I'd be glad to address them now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Are there any questions for Mr. Howard regarding his comments about the easement? John?
Again, I'm two, so I'm not quite sure I understand. I'm just, help me understand, Howard. What are we, what's a 365 day thing?
Demolition delay.
Okay. And we said it's, Howard, you said it was not, what did you say again?
We will have a permanent prohibition on demolition. We will have a permanent prohibition on alterations to the exterior of the building. It is permanent. It is not time limited.
So that means that they
Well, it's fairly easy to imagine, okay, this building gets built and they come back and basically say, oh, wait a minute, we've got, X number of square feet of additional space. We just submit for the 365-day demolition delay and the historic building is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay, so you're saying that there's going to be an easement, or you're seeking an easement that applies to just the historic structure.
The easement will apply to the historic structure, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is Fred, just to offer some clarification. This, and I will defer to the wisdom staff, this is outside of the guidelines, but it was a question that was raised by the committee at the last meeting. Okay. So we just wanted to have Myrick here in case a question was raised.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I get it.
And then along those lines, is there anyone else that signed up to speak that had anything that they wanted to share that I may have missed?
I don't see anyone else in the meeting other than those that have already spoken.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the commissioners for the applicant or staff? Okay, let's close the public hearing once again and turn back to internal discussion.
I am of the ilk to propose or make a motion that we defer this application pending further information on the garage. Design information. I mean that, and including seeing sections through it, like dark studies, relationships from what you see from a perspective from the street, even if it's computer generated, understanding of what this building actually looks like versus what it's drawn to look like in 2D fashion.
Well, I'll comment that I think it feels as though that's where we're headed, only because I think there's too many questions at this point to approve it. So to give the applicant a chance to kind of give us the information that would make us comfortable with what they're proposing, I would agree with John.
As far as my point of view, my inclination honestly was to approve with a load of conditions that would return it to us if staff wasn't comfortable with what they were seeing. But that does put an awful lot on staff without a lot of direction. And I think I'm being swayed to suggest we defer it to get yes, the light and dark studies and a greater sense of how that parking garage is going to read, and might even go so far as to ask for a seasonal study in daylight too, for all 4 seasons, just so we get a sense of what the light's going to do and to the read in the facade.
Excellent.
Because yes, if that thing goes flat, that thing is going to completely overwhelm the historic building.
Yep.
So I guess the question, we're at a situation here where we can approve mechanically, I guess this is a question back, is we can approve, we can deny. Can we defer and send it back to the applicant as a decision? I assume we can, yes. So
Yes, we have the ability to defer.
why don't we make that motion?
I'll
And
make that motion.
Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? Okay. All right, we'll go around the room. Curtis,
aye.
John,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
and I agree as well. So that is a motion to defer this application. And then just quickly for staff, do we need to summarize any of the comments or requests that are based, that this deferral is based on, or do you all have that in the notes as we've discussed?
This is Colette. So from your comments, I have that you would like a greater sense of how the parking garage will read, including light and dark studies, possibly a seasonal study. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that list?
A shadow study.
And to be clear, what we're trying to understand is how much of the exterior articulation is reading up from this building, and how transparent the structure is when not in direct sunlight.
Well, and I also think that the part of the shadow study is to understand how big this thing is and how much shadow it's going to cast onto the streets.
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing.
And outside of the shadow study, our concern is frankly that the plan on those upper levels of the garage does not really match the facade, except on the south side. And the north side doesn't match it on the west side, which is the dominant side.
Yeah.
And could I make one extra comment that, phase one or the first time this came through a year ago, we did approve the massing and these setbacks, but it wasn't yet determined that that middle tier was a giant parking garage. So I think, I think that's the part that is just needing a little more definition for us to feel comfortable with.
Excellent point, Janine.
Yes.
And this is just to clarify, your comment about transparency, was that specific to the garage?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the screening can be very transparent under certain conditions.
Yeah.
And I'm looking
and completely solid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add to that, and completely solid and flat in others.
Right.
Yeah, and on page 14 of their most current application, I'll just make a comment that if I didn't sit in on this meeting here, I would not understand that that center tier was anything other than a giant warehouse type loft, living condition, and it would, renders very much like glass. And so I think that's where we just need to get some understanding of really how this will truly look.
Yes.
And my last comment, I think, is kind of general, and I hope the applicants hear this. Parking garages design does not get its due. I can't think of an excellent parking garage design in Raleigh yet that I would buy into, because they are afterthoughts and they are not necessarily ever designed by the architect. They're designed by the parking lot or the parking garage specialist and get handed over to be then skinned over by the architect, and they're never considered an actual building which has impact on the urban environment. If this isn't an example of what that needs to happen, I don't know what is.
And I'd love to leave the applicant with the closing thought that we have great appreciation for how much this design has come, how far it's come from the initial application we looked at, and just how much you all have done to make it congruous with the historic structure. This is just clarity we're looking for here.
This is Morris. May I say one thing? Or is it closed?
Well, I think we made a decision, but Russ, let me know, I don't mind hearing the applicant's comment, but I don't know where it falls in the order of things.
I just want to say thank you and that we've tried to incorporate any comments, and we believe the process always makes the building better. And we will certainly come back with all the information and make a case why we are going to be the first garage that you like in Raleigh.
Thank you.
I believe that too. So.
I believe that is true.
Thank you.
Go forth, my son, and prosper. That's fantastic.
All right. Thank you.
And so that is our last evidentiary hearing for the evening.
Did we vote on that deferral? I'm sorry.
We did.
Maybe we did.
We did.
We did.
We did. Okay.
We did. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And that application has been deferred, and I will just echo Mr. Belladin and your team. Thank you for the continued work on this, especially the evolution at the base of the building and the response on Tucker Street to the historic structure. I think the fact that that got a big check mark and wasn't the topic of discussion certainly means that you all are headed in the right direction. I too am optimistic that you will do a much better parking deck than what I've seen in other parts of the warehouse district where I happen to work. And so with that, we look forward to seeing you all next month. If you have any questions, again, please reach out to staff, and they'll follow up with us if we need to provide any more clarification on our comments this evening. Okay. With that, staff, is there any other business that we need to discuss? I know we're coming up on 8 o'clock and everybody is probably hungry.
Tanya here. I don't think there is. I'm going to let Colette.
I have one thing.
Chime in. Okay, but I wanted to mention briefly, just as a reminder, that the next COA meeting will be Wednesday, December 8th in the evening. We don't do one in November, so we do this sort of oddly placed December one to account for that. So it's, November, December. So it's been on the schedule and hopefully it's on your calendars, but December 8th, same time, probably same place. Go ahead, Clint.
So the only item that I have is that at the last meeting, we had 2 demolition related applications. We have a volunteer for one. John volunteered to be our liaison for the case on Washington Street, but there was another case on Oberlin that you guys decided that you would discuss at a later date as to who would be the liaison. Are any of you interested, or would you like me to send out an email?
Janine, would you be willing to do it? I'm asking because I have to really dive into the Raleigh the Oakwood district, and that's going to eat a lot of my available time.
I don't have a lot of time. I guess I just need to understand what exactly I need to do for that. I don't have a lot of availability to meet with anybody outside of unless it's outside of business hours.
Well, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a COA committee member either. It just has to be a commissioner.
I do work with homeowners in my day job that we are guiding them towards salvage demolition, and I do have contacts in that world that I really strongly recommend people consider. And I'm happy to share that. I don't know kind of what more this kind of ask is.
I think the applicant really needs to understand limitations on what could possibly go back on that lot without making any kind of decision sounding thing, because I suspect they're thinking the economics of their situation will leave them with the ability to put quite a structure on there, and it's just not going to be the reality.
So you're saying maybe a quick feasibility summary? Is that
or just a review of what the COA is going to look at when when a new structure is proposed there. I think they stand to make a hell of a lot more money in bringing that old structure back from the dead and selling it than they do actually ripping it down and replacing it. And that's my, my personal opinion, but that's the underlying teeth of the demolition delay. Is that what goes back still has to follow the COA guidelines?
That's a good point.
It really, I know the old math was that you had to basically put a building back that was about 2 times the size of the one you were ripping down to make a profit. And that's kind of what's floating behind my concern there. They're going to take a bath, and it's going to be not some very pleasant COA meetings, Just a thought.
I mean, another option, Colette, Aaron, or Tanya, is to just not to put Janine on the spot, but to go ahead and send out an email.
Yeah.
Because I think there may be others on the committee who are somewhat interested specifically in Oberlin that while we here are all interested, timing for this specific 4 people may not work in that calendar process.
And honestly, in this case, it might be very helpful for a member of DRAC to have that. It might be helpful for a member of DRAC to have that conversation, because they have a little more latitude about what they can talk about.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Does that help you guys? Staff? Find a way to solve?
We will send out an email.
Okay. Can I say to my fellow commissioners, way to go on motion making?
Did you make a motion today, Curtis? Maybe you did.
I did not. I did not. And the first meeting I attended, I made most of them, if not all of them. So you guys are clearly getting comfortable.
Well, no, I've given up all decorum of doing things as I should.
Can I make 2 quick little comments? One is, I'm sure I can figure this out myself, but I'm sure somebody can share with me even quicker. I would love to know if we can pull together all the newsletters, the HOD newsletters. Like, I guess, I love that Curtis caught that Oakwood one. And I just feel like I'd love to just be keeping up on what is being discussed for sure. And that must not be the only newsletter, but I don't read any of them. So is that something that we can post or share, or how privileged is it?
Tanya here. The only other one that I'm aware of is Boylan Heights, and they do an electronic newsletter. I think anybody can sign up for their Boylan Announce email list. It's not a conversation. It's just people usually, I found a cat, or
Yeah.
have a house to rent.
Yeah,
or,
I'm less interested in that and rather just like,
or newsletter submittals do, and then they share it that way.
Okay.
The Oakwood one, staff is emailed it. Otherwise, it's pretty privy to just Oakwoodians.
Which I am one of.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, probably 90% of that newsletter is just, cement.
The lost cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
But I mean, I think you have a good point that being really aware of that relative to our good work here would be very helpful. Also, CACs. I know there are no CACs, but there are CACs. They continued on, and so keeping an eye on those too has been sort of an important thing.
Well, only one more thing I wanted to add real quickly, maybe just for clarity for our upcoming virtual meetings, which I know we're sort of all a little disappointed to be back in that world, but I know Verche is sometimes asking if there's anyone who hasn't signed up to speak. And I recall one of the first virtual meetings we had where somebody didn't sign up to speak ahead of time and we wouldn't let them speak. And there was a whole process and a whole sign.
Oh, right. We wouldn't let them. That is still the case. Tanya here.
Okay.
That is still the case.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they're not on the list, that means nobody then they didn't sign up and they're not there.
And
So-
unfortunately, for the case I'm remembering, there was a lot of people signed up and that one homeowner couldn't participate and we just had to defer. So I just want to bring that up, just not to give false hope that we could pull someone in unexpectedly.
Yeah, and we're very clear with anybody we speak with about those requirements.
Okay.
I have a quick question because going back to the volunteer thing that I did for the house on in Glenwood, Brooklyn. And Raz, as I understood last time, I had to wait a month or then wait another month because of things kind of going through the pipeline for it to be okay for me to then contact them. I don't know when I'm supposed to contact them, and honest to God, I don't even know how to contact them. But if I can
reach out to staff, John.
Yeah.
Oh,
just
okay.
John.
Okay.
We've got a while. We will send you an email with the relevant information when you're able to contact them.
Okay, thank you. Because here's my concern: we've had lots of rain and we've had lots of weather, and I'm just you know, the house is just sitting there.
It's true.
And I don't even. I'd hate to just. I want to get involved as quickly as I can, and I don't want to jump the gun, and I don't want to, go out of protocol. I just want to make sure I do it at the most earliest opportunity possible.
Mm-hmm. And with that one, what her intentions are with that property are the interesting thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that she's intending to build back. So.
That's part of what I want to find out.
Yeah.
But we can't discuss that right now.
Right.
Yeah. But just let me know ASAP. I know you will. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something.
Okay. 3 hours.
I hope December is going to be good to us.
Me too.
Meetings in one, I guess.
December will be good. January, we'll have to see.
Right.
I'll tell you guys, compared to the good old days when I was on the committee for last time, we'd have some times where there are 15 cases on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And, but what I've noticed is these hearings we've been living through, these are the harder cases.
Mm-hmm.
When we have 15, we might have 10 that were pretty damn easy, and there'd be one that would be just dreadful, and the others would be somewhere in the middle. These all tend to be requiring a lot of thought. So it's a remarkable change.
Build up some good karma and cross your fingers. Maybe Janine, you can help somebody find their perfectly good cat. We'll see.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right.
I have just one outside observation. Rashay is really getting into a strong groove as chairperson.
She is.
Yes, I noticed that too. I love the way you follow up at the end of each case.
Yes.
I love all of it. This is Tanya here. That's my favorite part. Thank you for mentioning that, Raz.
Well, and you're also, Rashay, you come off as accessible, but you're still guiding, which is a great combo too. Sometimes you see the imperial chair, and that's not necessarily great. But what you're doing is great. Keep it up.
Ditto.
Thank you. And thank you guys for coming to these meetings prepared and, offering strong feedback and comments. For the sake of timing, the comments that you have are largely aligned with what my thoughts would have been on the other side of this. So it makes it easy for me to just focus on continuing to guide us forward.
Cool.
So. All right. Well, with that, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn, do we?
Nope, you can just declare it done.
Okay, well, I declare it done. We'll see you all at the various meetings on the next COA, December 8th.
Yes.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. All right.
Have a good night.